Yeah, it's all handoff?
Yep.
Is this it, right?
That's it.
I'm just going to keep it here so people...
Perfect.
Where are we stack it up over to this side?
Stephanie? Yes.
You're actually right in the middle.
Is it right there?
Yeah, it's right here. So you're introducing
Okay.
Brian.
Okay.
So Stephanie, you go after Brian. He's going to introduce you, and then you're going to introduce Senator Sean Ryan. This is going to stay up here if you want that. They're on your face. They're on your face, honey. Okay, wait a minute. So you're here. Brian's going to introduce you, and then you're going to, when you're done talking, you're going to introduce Senator Sean Ryan.
He's a senator now?
State senator.
No, I mean you can just. I mean I'll get my time. There we go. Is there some rule about what the judge looks at?
It doesn't matter.
Very good.
You ready?
I'm ready. My handwritten notes with a little printer at home.
So is it just
Yeah, I think that's probably the best thing to do. And then I'm introducing you. Yep. Okay. All right, good morning, everybody. We're going to get started. My name is Justin Booth. I am Vice Chair of the Scajaquada Corridor Coalition. I am also Executive Director at Go Bike, and I want to thank everyone here for coming today for this exciting announcement. The Scajaquada Corridor Coalition is a number of neighborhood groups and associations and interested community partners across this corridor. From representatives from Vision Niagara, we've got Black Rock Riverside Alliance, Grant Amherst Business Association, Buffalo State, the Trinidad Neighborhood Association, Parkside Community Association, along with Preservation Buffalo Niagara, Restore Our Community Coalition, the Buffalo Olmsted Parks Conservancy, Buffalo Niagara Waterkeeper, and Go Bike. So we've been talking about the future of the Scajaquada for probably over the last 20 years, and me personally probably for the last 15. All alternatives that we previously studied were centered around roadway traffic, function, and speed, and underestimated the rich assets along the corridor. So we have a new beginning. The Greater Buffalo Niagara Regional Transportation Council, the GBN-RTC, will soon launch a new process that emphasizes the community's vision for this corridor and then determine how our mobility needs fit within that vision. We have an opportunity to prioritize the current values and needs of people in our community. And by doing so, we can start to reduce the harmful impact of our urban highways and expressways, including the Scajaquada and the Kensington. Today, you will hear from members of the coalition as we unveil our vision for the future of the corridor. It is our hope that we start today by sharing what is possible, to have a conversation to provide an idea of what is available to us, and for us to embark on this new process with the goal for everyone here to think big about what the future of our city could be. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our partner in the coalition, Jill Jedlicka from Buffalo Niagara Waterkeeper.
Thank you, Justin. And hi, everybody. Welcome to the shores of the Scajaquada Creek on this glorious day, Mother Nature cooperating. So Scajaquada Creek used to be a beautiful, iconic, and healthy waterway, not only that it supported recreation and wildlife and access to our cultural assets, But believe it or not, this living infrastructure system once served as the drinking water for the city of Buffalo. Today, Scajaquada Creek is considered one of the most polluted creeks in New York State. It is barely even recognizable in its current form and function. It is literally a 13-mile long natural disaster, man-made. This is what a century of bad decisions on urban planning and infrastructure will give you. For several decades, Waterkeeper and our partners have been fighting to fix the mistakes and clean up and restore this water system. We've made patchwork progress in places like Forest Lawn Cemetery, some of the sewer work being done by the Buffalo Sewer Authority in the town of Cheektowaga, and also at some brownfield sites along Niagara Street. But this work and incremental progress doesn't have to be as hard as it has been historically. The redesign of the 198 corridor is the last best chance that we have to enable creek restoration. So all the SCC members here are not here to lecture and espouse our vision upon the community. We want to share this vision, not as an endpoint, but as a conversation starter. We invite the entire community into the conversation, and we ask you to consider the creek and prioritize the creek in this process. Using the natural watercourse of the creek as a foundation and starting point, by reclaiming back what Mother Nature had intended. This is what led us to the current vision of what is possible for this corridor. The 198 redesign is not simply a transportation problem to solve. This is not a public debate about a small road, a big road, a bigger road, an expressway. It is more comprehensive from the outset, and it should incorporate our living infrastructure systems. We can restore a more natural watercourse for Scajaquada Creek and Hoyt Lake. Once and for all, we can end the sewer overflows that plague our waterways and get rid of the trash racks and the stagnant water that we see in the creek. We can remove the toxic legacy contamination. We can support and improve ecological health and uplift for fish and wildlife. And most importantly, we can enhance and return equitable public access to this water resource for our community. It will be cheaper and quicker if we incorporate these goals in the forefront. We need a deliberate and intentional vision to restore this waterway. The funding is out there. We as a community need to make the case and seek a community-driven solution so we can bring those funds and direct them into our community and our home. So please help us make these goals and vision a reality, and please be a part of the process. Oh, sorry. I'm supposed to invite Brian Dole from the Olmsted Parks Conservancy.
Good morning. My name is Brian Dold. I'm the Director of Planning and Advocacy for the Buffalo Olmsted Parks Conservancy and the Chair of the Scajaquada Corridor Coalition. I'm proud to stand here this morning with my fellow SCC members as we continue the collaborative effort towards reimagining the Scajaquada Corridor. It's fitting that we've come together this week to unveil this vision for our community. On Monday, we celebrated the 199th birthday of Frederick Law Olmsted, the man whose vision for a connected city within a park system lives on in Buffalo and has become increasingly relevant over the last 12 months. Sadly, over the last 70 years, we have lost a large piece of Olmsted's vision for our city through the introduction of expressways through our communities. And 70 years later, there are very few with any recollection of the magnitude of what was lost and the great benefit to the community it provided. Things such as the meadow and the lake of Delaware Park as an uninterrupted park experience, or the longest of Olmsted's parkways, Humboldt Parkway, bringing together the communities of the east side, not dividing them, in addition to the many other priorities identified by Jill and Justin and by others. So as we begin to re-engage in a conversation on the future of the Scajaquada Corridor as a community, the members of the SCC felt it was vitally important that we have a clear vision in our minds of the tremendous assets along our corridor, a vision of restored communities, a vision of reconnected parks, and a vision of restored waterways. and provide compelling visuals, which we have here today, to communicate that vision. But again, it's to get a conversation started in the community and to get people thinking about what is possible. So this is a moment of great opportunity and responsibility, and the Conservancy is proud to stand with our other members of the SCC in sharing this vision, and we look forward to continuing the conversation, engaging in the planning process, because there is no doubt that we have an opportunity to make transformational change on this corridor. And the community around the corridor deserves the right quality of life solutions right now. And what a wonderful present it would be for the community if, on Olmsted's 200th birthday, at the completion of this planning process, we're announcing a community-driven plan to restore our communities, reconnect our parks, improve our waterways, and support our local economy. So I'll echo the call to action of my fellow SCC members for every resident to get engaged in this upcoming planning process. And I encourage people to visit the Scajaquada Corridor Coalition's website to learn more about this exciting community vision. So with that, I'm gonna introduce Stephanie Barber-Jeter from the Restore Our Community Coalition, another key partner in this effort. Thanks, Stephanie.
Thank you, Brian. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I'm Stephanie Barber. I'm first the president of the Hamlin Park Taxpayers Association, and then the president of the Restore Our Community Coalition. Buffalo, Western New York, it is our time. Can you imagine? Before most of us were born, rambling through our neighborhoods was a road that we would now have to change. And it's okay. Our intention should be clear. It is to restore the grandeur and the livability of our connected communities, as Mr. Olmsted intended. It is a ways away from where we started, isn't it? But I believe, because of the energy of 3 separate neighborhoods, to do something powerful, and it's taken us over 12 years to get here. Can you imagine doing something for 12 years? Some of you who are married understand the intensity of that I just said. But it's been long. But the sweetness of Buffalo suggested that our generation would be awesome, triumphant, and courage-filled. So we have 3 neighborhoods put together by a road that we hate, that has killed many of us, that's impacted negatively, but we've stayed at the table with our heads down, remembering Mr. Olmsted's vision, to have a city of parks that connect neighborhoods. I am often thinking about who all made this possible besides those of us here, and all of you, the citizens of the city, who come to these parks and live in these neighborhoods, who drive through, play here, work here, who really want a difference. I want to thank, though, I got to pause and thank people we don't normally thank. You know, people who we say, you know, y'all had a role. No, I want to tell you that because this our traveling this road has been long, I want to thank the people who moved themselves in place, who got in a position to make a difference, who kept clawing and gnawing to make sure that at this moment in time, they sat in houses of government that will deliver the resources to make this work. Congressman Higgins and Senator Shawn and Crystal Peoples-Stokes, they have kept at the vision. I want to thank the everyday people who tell us, you know, we are one neighborhood. Yes, from the Fruit Belt to Black Rock, we're one road. This is a time to thread that message. Be we black, white, or brown, be we rich or poor. This is our time. I thank you. Oh. Senator, I would never forget you, man. Come on up.
You're doing it there. You're doing it. Good morning, everybody. Last week I did a press conference and everyone had gloves and hats on, so big change here in the last few days. But as a wise person once told me, it's not springtime in Buffalo until there's snow on the daffodils. So we had that, but now that's all our rearview mirror now, right? So Stephanie, you summed it up. We've been working at this a long time. Nobody would get up and look at what was here in the 50s and say, today, by today's standards, nobody would say, let's go lay a highway dividing our neighborhoods. Let's go lay a highway cutting the city in half. I don't know what they were thinking in the late 50s. Can't really get inside their brains, but one thing's for sure is they weren't thinking about the strength of Buffalo. They weren't thinking about strengthening our neighborhoods, and they weren't thinking about really shining the jewel that was Buffalo. So 3 years ago, we were able to ensure that these same voices were heard before the state DOT started a plan that the community roundly rejected. We went back to the drawing board. We've been working at it. We've been a bit delayed by the pandemic, but today, the same community voices that were together last year are saying we want better, are unveiling a concept. And it's the start of a community conversation about what to do with a highway that never should have been built, a highway that divided our neighborhoods, and a highway that ripped our park in half. So the community was truly consulted back then. This never would have happened. But today we have a chance to fix a historic mistake and to reunite Delaware Park with MLK Park. Used to be together by the grandest of the parkways in Buffalo. It wasn't Chapin, it wasn't McKinley, it wasn't Bidwell. The grandest parkway was Humboldt Parkway. And it was beautiful. We have a chance to put it back together. We have a chance to make it so kids who live in that neighborhood can walk to Delaware Park as easily as kids who live in Parkside could walk over to MLK. Our community doesn't look the way it does. Its divisions were often intentional, and they're still long lasting. But the divisions, they don't stop there, right? So the parks were divided from one and other. This is a great vantage point to see. If you're here at the History Museum, you want to get to Buff State College, it's right there. You can see it, but there's a highway in the way. You want to go to the Albright Knox Art Museum, you can see it, but you can't really get there because there's a highway in the way. And if you want to go to Delaware Park Casino, you can't get there because there's a highway in the way. And if you're just up on Amherst Street, you can still see the top of Buff State College buildings and say, oh, I'd like to maybe take a walk over to the college. Nobody from Amherst Street walks over to the college because you have to walk around to get there. So we are going to start this plan, and we're not going to say what's the fastest, quickest way to move cars from point A to B. We're going to start this plan by asking the community, what do they want at the end? And if you start by asking what you want at the end, then you design a road system that could help satisfy those needs. And so we're going to ask that question first. And then we're going to build an infrastructure system to reflect what the community needs. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. It's time to have a bold vision from Buffalo. We're not taking B- plans and saying good enough anymore. We're an A+ city. We have A+ infrastructure designed by Olmsted. And if we can't enhance that and make that better, then we're going to go back to the drawing board until we get it right. So now is the time to reclaim our city's history and to reshape its future for generations to come. But we do it by working together, bringing in the stakeholders, bringing in the community groups, bringing in everyone from the community, giving them an opportunity to participate in this process. And I will tell you that I am 100% confident that we will get a great outcome if the community is involved the whole way. So we have a lot of things in Buffalo that we look at and say, gee, I wonder why we did that. And our congressman, Brian Higgins, doesn't spend a lot of time saying, wonder why we did it. He spends a lot of time saying, how can we fix it? So, some people look at things and say, why? And Congressman Higgins looks at things and says, why not? And you've seen that leadership whether it's along our inner harbor, our outer harbor, or Ohio Street. I always like to say, if they could take an industrial corridor like Ohio Street and turn it into a parkway, well, then we should be able to take a road that runs through a park and maybe make that into a parkway. Almost makes sense, right? So it's my pleasure to bring up my Congressman, Brian Higgins.
Thank you very much, Sean and Brian and Jill and Stephanie and Justin and Sean Ryan, first as a citizen, then a member of the Assembly, and now a very influential member in the majority in the state Senate, speaking truth to power. And you know, for too long in this community, too many projects that were bad for this community, they were imposed on us from a state bureaucracy without any accountability. And the day that, you know, some traffic engineer sits in a cubicle on Western Avenue in Albany, they are over. And as Sean said, you start off with what is it that the community wants. I remember 3 years ago.
That's right.
That state DOT took a walk because they didn't like the pushback they were getting from the community that will have to live with this project for the next 60 years. So the removal of the Scajaquada to a parkway, the restoration of Humboldt Parkway, the Scajaquada Creek revitalization and the Black Rock Harbor, they're not ambitious projects, they're essential projects for the new Buffalo. I often say that, you know, what are the similarities between Central Park in New York and the Olmsted Park system in Buffalo? Well, they're both 850 acres. But even more importantly, they were built in post-pandemic New York City. They were built in post-pandemic Buffalo. It was a different pandemic, but it was a pandemic nonetheless of cholera. And Frederick Olmsted, he came to landscape architecture late in his life. He was a public health worker in the Civil War. He believed in the healing power of parks, fresh air, abundant sunlight. And he went about building his park and park systems throughout this country, most prominently in this community, because he incorporated those objectives in the design of his parks and parkways. Fast forward to the 1950s. America's obsession with the automobile, the obsession with building expressways to connect wealth to wealth and destroying communities along the way. The grandest of the Olmsted Park system and parkways was Humboldt Parkway. We talk about all the things, the fragility that this pandemic that we're going through now has exposed, health disparities in communities that have been denied the healing power of parks and parkways. And you also, when you see an Olmsted Park, you're taken by many, many things. But in the Olmsted Parks, there are no fences, there are no gates, and there are no walls, because they were built deliberately to promote social cohesion and public health. This project is essential. This July, the House will take action, will take a vote to approve a $2 trillion infrastructure bill, largest infrastructure bill in the history of the nation. Last time this country did an infrastructure bill was when George W. Bush was president in 2005, $350 billion. This far exceeds that. There is also a recognition in this bill to commit $20 billion. We're trying to increase it to $50 billion to restore neighborhoods that were destroyed by highway building throughout the decade of the 1950s. We are going to determine what this project is going to look like, and together we can work to get the funding for this project, or the three projects, call them what you will. I think we should call them one. But Buffalo's best days are immediately in front of us. We're at hopefully the latter stage of the current pandemic. And we have to be ready as we enter post-pandemic Buffalo. Not only looking at projects that are shovel-ready, but projects like this that are shovel-worthy. And the great energy that we have, the confluence of events as it relates to funding these kinds of projects. There was a day where you'd have to fight to get one piece of this versus the other. This project, you read it, don't take my word for it. You read the provisions of restoring neighborhood infrastructure piece under the Biden bill. This will be a national model for bringing back the Olmsted Parks in its entirety. We lost 90 acres because of expressway building. How could a community allow that to happen to itself? How could that happen? No more. Those days are over. And Sean Ryan said it. He's going to fight along with me. We're going to get the others, Crystal Peoples, in a very, very influential position as majority leader. This is not your project, New York State Department of Transportation. This is our project. And if you want to facilitate it, fine. If you don't, get out of the way, because those days are over. Thank you for including me.
Ask them if they want to ask any questions.
Oh, look, all right, thank you, everybody. Now's a chance to answer or ask any questions.
So what's next?
So what is next? Who wants to take that?
Hell. Talk about the health.
So the Greater Buffalo Niagara Regional Transportation Council is going to be restarting the process to engage the community about what the future of this corridor could be. And again, we are here presenting the coalition's vision as a starting point for that conversation, and encouraging everyone to participate in that process so our community's voices can be heard.
I think also what's next is a real need for urgency. As someone who's a 12-year veteran to this work, I can tell you that there has not been a sense of urgency by the New York State Department of Transportation. It's been a lot of talk. Let's do some plans. We'll be back next time. And when they come back, the plans are the same. And we always wonder, you know, aren't those the same pictures you showed us last time? We've gone through that 4 times. We need a sense of urgency. We need everyone in government to be in line with us. We need them to begin to show the respect to our elected officials that when we say go left, you go left. And that's what we are pushing for right now. And to connect this work in a meaningful way for all the communities along the parkway to get the most out of it, we need to have those groups work together. And I'm specifically talking about the city of Buffalo's Transportation Department, the State Transportation Department, and the Federal Transportation Department, with a sense of urgency. You know, like in our lifetime, this will get built, right? Thank you.
Any indication, but this is any indication of projected costs here? How much is this project cost?
Early on, 3 years ago, there was a projected cost of $100 million, and that money has been earmarked, and that money is still available from New York State. But we don't know past then, because we're back into a more of a vision stage, and then we can price it out. But the project that was rejected was very heavy on costly infrastructure, so we're not sure if this one's going to add or not. But it's not a heavier project. Let's put it that way. We're looking to tone it down a little bit, which generally leads to less cost. And then where we're at this process is, the Department of Transportation has realized they can't get a handle on this. They've been trying for 15 years, and it seems no matter what they do, it's rejected. So they've wisely taken a step back, and we put the Greater Buffalo Niagara Regional Transportation is going to be in charge of the public input and planning on this, and they're going to refer it up to the State Department of Transportation. So we're going to have a little more of an on-the-ground planning session, which we're confident will yield very good results.
Yeah. So I just want to add one thing. Sorry, I want to add one thing about the cost too, and just reminding that this is not just a transportation project, and it's not just about transportation dollars. The goal of this comprehensive approach that all these speakers have talked about is how do we layer in the investments? How do we leverage what's being done? If you're going to tear up a road to create a parkway, you can also replace your water pipes and your wastewater system at the same time. You can install a green infrastructure project. You can restore shorelands. You can restore the creek. Those funding sources come from all over. So if we're coordinated at this effort, local, state, federal, even philanthropic investment, the end result will be a lot cheaper if we just look at this as transportation.
What's the timetable on this? If I come back here in 10 years, what am I going to see?
Well, I can start to say that the GBNRTC's new process is going to kick off next month, the month of May, and expected completion date being March, April of next year. And at that point, we'll have ideally a community vetted plan that'll be ready to move forward for construction.
And that's next year is when the money, provided that Congress, both the House and the Senate, complete a bill and it's signed into law this year, the money will start flowing in 2022 in time to fund these projects. And I also want to say that, again, the state has already proven, by imposing a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit on an expressway, which was designed to get people out of the city as quickly as possible, is no faster a commuter route than the adjacent side streets. So a beautiful parkway to replace this elevated section doesn't have to be proven. It's already been proven. We just want to make sure that the aesthetics are better. And I would always argue that grass, parks, and parkways are a lot more economical than steel, asphalt, and concrete.
All right, that's it.
Thanks, everybody.
All right, thank you.
Good job. Good to see you, Mike.